The garden lived in a state of perpetual golden light. Toby moved through the grass, his pace measured by the height of the blades against his shell. He brushed past a patch of clover, taking 3 full minutes to cross the damp earth. He navigated the garden by rhythm, not by distance. He stopped to inspect a dewdrop clinging to a petal, his head tilting to catch the refraction of the sun. He was content in this steady, quiet progress. Then, the path widened, and the world changed. A large wooden structure blocked the trail. It was anchored firmly into the dirt, painted with bright, chaotic colors that hurt the eyes. A message stood out in bold, rainbow letters: the Great Garden Race. Today, Toby stopped. He tilted his head, reading the words once, then twice. The letters seemed to vibrate with a frantic energy that felt entirely alien to his own nature. He looked at the long, winding path ahead of the sign, then looked down at his own feet. The distance looked insurmountable. The silence of the garden remained, but the air felt heavier, charged with the weight of an impending challenge he was never built to meet. A blur of fur exploded into the frame. Ruby the rabbit skidded to a halt, kicking up a spray of dirt that coated the sign. She bounced, her movements sharp and erratic, circling Toby until he was at the center of her whirlwind. She locked her gaze on him, chest heaving with exertion, then struck a rigid, confident pose. "I am Ruby. I am the fastest in the garden." "Are you racing, Toby?" she squeaked. Toby looked down. He traced a slow, deliberate circle in the soil with his claw. His head retracted, pulling low until he was nothing more than a rounded stone in the grass. "Me? Race?" he whispered. "But I am so slow. Everyone will laugh." He stayed hidden. The world narrowed to the dark interior of his shell. Then, a shadow fell over him. Mama knelt beside him, the stems of a sunflower bending under her weight. She reached out, lifting his chin with a gentle nudge of her flipper. She tapped his shell twice. A firm, rhythmic sound that echoed in the quiet. "Slow feet see the most." "My little one," she said. "Just do your best and be kind." Toby felt the weight of her presence. He stood a little taller, his head emerging, his eyes meeting hers with a steady, quiet resolve. Lulu the ladybug perched on a daisy, her tiny whistle pressed to her lips. She blew a sharp high note that cut through the morning air. Ruby exploded forward, a streak of motion that vanished into the tall grass instantly. Toby took his first step. It was slow, it was deliberate. He planted his feet with rhythmic intent, ignoring the distance growing between him and the rabbit. He moved past the familiar roots and pebbles, his gaze scanning the ground for the path. Near a bend in the trail, a small, dark puddle blocked the way. Toby stopped. He noticed a splash of color that did not belong in the mud. Lulu was trapped, turned completely upside down, her legs kicking the air in a frantic, desperate rhythm. She was struggling to right herself, but the surface tension of the water held her fast. Toby leaned forward, his shell casting a shadow over the puddle. He reached out, nudging her gently with the tip of his nose. He pushed until she flipped back onto her feet. Lulu adjusted her glasses, shook her wings, and spun in a circle. "Thank you, Toby! You noticed me!" she squeaked. Toby watched her hover for a moment, then took his next steady step forward, leaving the puddle behind as the race continued. Toby kept his momentum, his steady gait leaving a clear trail in the soft earth. The path wound toward a patch of oak trees where the shadows grew long. He stopped short. A woven basket lay on its side, spilling its contents across the dirt. Sammy the squirrel was darting back and forth, his paws scrambling to catch 6 acorns that were rolling toward a drain. Sammy looked up, his whiskers twitching with clear agitation. He reached for one, but it slipped past his grip. Toby did not hesitate. He moved into the center of the chaos, positioning his body to block the path of the runaway seeds. He used his nose to nudge a stray acorn back toward the basket, then another, his movements precise and calm. Sammy paused his frantic movements, watching as Toby methodically gathered every piece. The squirrel picked up the final nut and placed it back into the basket. Sammy looked at the full container, then looked at Toby. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around the turtle, squeezing tight. "You are the kindest turtle!" Sammy chirped. Toby blinked, a gentle smile spreading across his face. He felt the warmth of the connection, a quiet reassurance that his pace was exactly what the garden needed. He turned away from the basket, took a deep breath, and resumed his slow, deliberate walk toward the path ahead. The path ended abruptly, at the edge of a wide, churning stream. The water was brown, thick with silt, and moved with a slow, heavy force that made the ground beneath Toby's feet feel unstable. He squinted against the glare reflecting off the surface. A few yards away, the silence of the garden was broken by a soft, wet thud. Ruby the rabbit stood at the bank, her ears drooping low against her back. She gathered her strength, muscles coiling to leap across the gap, but the mud gave way under her weight. She slipped, tumbling forward until she landed hard in the muck. She did not jump up. She did not try to run. She simply sat, her feet buried in the sludge, her head bowed in quiet defeat. Toby stepped closer, his heavy gait undisturbed by the treacherous ground. He watched the way the mud clung to her, the way she stared at the water with hollow eyes. The competitive energy that had propelled her earlier was gone, replaced by the weight of a goal she could no longer reach alone. Toby stopped at the very edge of the bank, his presence casting a long shadow over the stranded rabbit. He looked at the stream, then at Ruby, and finally understood why his slow, steady path had led him here. Toby moved into the shallow water, his feet finding purchase in the thick, wet ground. He stopped directly beside the rabbit. Without a sound, he pushed his weight forward and lowered his shell, flattening his posture until he formed a sturdy, level platform across the mud. Ruby looked up, startled, then carefully placed one paw, then another, onto his back. She stepped cautiously, testing the stability of the bridge he provided. Toby held perfectly still, his muscles braced against the weight. Ruby crossed, stepping off onto the firm grass of the opposite bank. She turned back, reaching out to help him climb up. They stood together, side by side, and turned toward the finish line just a few yards away. Lulu and Sammy waited, their cheers rising as the pair approached. As they crossed the line, the ribbons snapped against their chests. Petals drifted down from the trees, covering the path in color. Ruby pulled a band from her wrist and placed it around Toby. He gave one small, rhythmic hop, his feet landing firmly in the dust. They had arrived at the end, not as rivals but as a team. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in streaks of peach and deep lavender. Toby climbed the gentle slope of the hill and settled into the grass beside Mama. He tucked his legs beneath him, feeling the cool earth against his belly. The first star flickered into existence, a sharp point of light in the deepening blue. Mama shifted, pulling her flipper around his shell to pull him closer. Toby watched the sky. Each minute brought more light to the darkness above. He thought of the race, the muddy stream, and the friends he had encountered. The rush of the morning felt distant now. Here, in the quiet, the speed of the day no longer mattered. He looked down at his feet, then back up at the stars. The garden was still, held in the soft breath of the coming night. He understood the lesson clearly. The path was long, but it was his to walk at his own speed. He leaned his head against Mama, closed his eyes, and let the rhythm of the evening take hold. The garden was peaceful. It was time to sleep.